Lesson 1.4, Nutrients in the Calorie, What Foods in Your Food, Part 1. The goals of this lesson are to clarify that a calorie is a unit of energy and to demonstrate the differences and similarities between energy as heat and energy that cells use. At the end of the lesson, students should be able to explain how calories describe food energy. We'll achieve these goals by completing a calorimetry lab. To prepare for this lesson, you will need to review the key scientific concepts that will be presented throughout the lesson. They include the difference between a food calorie and a regular calorie, and how food calories are measured using calorimetry, including the limitations of bomb calorimetry as a model for metabolism. You can review the scientific content in the background reading provided for you in the teacher primer, the teacher manual, and the student workbook. The teacher primer provides in-depth knowledge about the scientific content presented in this lesson. The teacher manual or lesson plan provides a minute-by-minute explanation of the lesson structure, including instructions on how to manage the discussion and the activity. The student workbook provides additional explanations for the students. You will need to print the calorimetry lab worksheets for the students. For the lab, you will need materials to set up several bomb calorimeter stations. For each calorimeter station, you will need one wine cork, one sewing needle, a large metal coffee can with holes punched around the sides near the bottom rim, a ring stand with 3 prolonged clamps, a 200 milliliter beaker filled at least halfway with water, a thermometer, a lighter, and some sort of food to burn. Food that can be easily punctured with the sewing needle are best. For example, Cheetos work really well. The key points of this lesson's do now are that we get nutrients and energy from the food that we eat, and that calories are not a thing, rather they describe the amount of energy. We'll get there by having a short discussion and by watching a video. To engage the students, ask them to recall types of nutrients in food. Then ask your students to define a calorie. Many students struggle with this. This video shows several college students struggling with the same question. Caution, check ahead of time that the video in the PowerPoint deck plays. If you have problems, there is a link to that video on YouTube in the digital version of the teacher's manual. The key points of this lesson activity are that burning food in a controlled environment and measuring the change in heat is a way to measure how much energy is in that food. This is called bomb calorimetry. Bomb calorimetry is an imperfect tool to measure calories because some components in food will burn that otherwise would not be used for energy in our bodies, like fiber. We get there by conducting the calorimetry lab. You can review the process of setting up the calorimetry lab on the first page of the lab worksheet. Students will light a set of given foods on fire and measure the change of temperature in the calorimeter before and during the process. Caution, this lab involves using fire. If this is not a possibility in your classroom for whatever reason, there is an online virtual version of the same lab available in the alternative approaches portion of the lesson on our website. To help students focus on the most important details of the lab, give each student an activity worksheet to track their data and take notes on the key points, which are how many calories are in the food that you tested, how does the number of calories you calculated compare to the number of calories on the food's nutrition facts panel, and how might the nutrient composition of the foods impact how many calories the body can absorb. Caution, the lab worksheet asks students to use an equation to calculate the amount of calories in the food using data they collected from the calorimetry experiment. You may want to check that the math used is at an appropriate level for your students. After your students finish the lab, you will want to save time to compare results from one group to another. The teacher primer and the teacher manual go over the key scientific concepts presented in this lab. The key points of this lesson's wrap-up are that heat energy when you light food on fire is similar to food energy used in our bodies because molecular bonds are broken to release that energy in both processes. The 4 macronutrients provide different amounts of energy because they have different molecular structures. We'll get there by having a Socratic discussion with the students. We'll summarize the lab by providing the definition of a calorie and probing the students to connect what they learned in the lab to the number of calories in various macronutrients. Some schools may have students conduct a calorimetry lab in their chemistry course. If this is the case and you don't want to repeat the same lab, you can instead complete the do now and wrap up of this lesson with a brief review of what was done in the previous calorimetry lab. This lesson deals with the misconception that calories are a tangible thing, like a molecule. However, calories are actually a unit that describes a thing, like a gram. This is an important concept to know when we discuss in later lessons whether there is such thing as good or bad calories. Students may ask what the 2,000 calories a day recommendation that appears on food labels is based on. 2,000 calories a day is a mathematically simple number selected by the FDA that is close to what an adult needs to maintain their weight, but the actual amount of calories you need depends on your sex, your weight, and your activity level. In general, a moderately active person that gets 30 to 60 minutes of exercise 3 times a week will need about 15 calories per pound of body weight to maintain their weight, although this number can vary based on metabolic rate, which is something we'll discuss in Unit 3. At the end of the lesson, students should be able to explain how calories measure food energy. Students will need to understand the content in this lesson for many lessons throughout the metabolic disease module. In the next lesson, we will discuss the macronutrients that yield calories, and as we progress through the module, we will see how the number of calories in certain foods and diets is connected to disease and health. Don't forget that if you have any questions, concerns, or feedback to let us know, you can contact any of the CTSE team members and we'll be happy to help you.